It happened. It it happened. I don't even know how. I didn't even know it was possible. But the United States Soccer Federation has made the right decision. Greg Berhalter has been relieved of his duties. Now, I'm not one to sit here and celebrate somebody losing their job. All right, that's sad. But this dude did make a couple million a year for the last 5 years, so I have a feeling he's going to be able to land on his feet, right? Like, this is not somebody that's just being kicked out on the cold street to try and brave the winter or the summer wherever he happens to be. This was the right call. Greg Berhalter can ride off of the sunset and retire. He'll probably go coach an MLS team. Maybe he'll win an MLS Cup someday, and I hope he has a great life. But he should not have been the coach of the U.S. national team, and now he is not the coach of the U.S. national team, and this is a glorious day. Right, we've got July 4th, 1776, right? We've got whatever day they invented American football, and we've got the day they fired Greg Berhalter. I'm happy with those three. I need a fourth one for Mount Rushmore. I don't even care. Okay, Greg Berhalter has been fired, and the United States has hope going into the World Cup in 2026. This is what we needed. Will it work? I don't know. I don't have a time machine, and if I did, I probably would have messed up the space-time continuum a long time ago, right? I would be yelling louder and celebrating louder, by the way, if I wasn't on the run. I am currently hidden in the back of a hotel room, and so I can't, scream at the top of my lungs like I would if I was at my home setup with sound-resistant walls. But alas, in my attempt to not be discovered, I'm just trying to get across to you how excited I am by the fact that Greg Berhalter has been relieved of his duties. Now, I want to be very clear. This man deserved to be fired. He's been the coach for nearly 6 years of the U.S. national team, allegedly building to something, and he just showed up at Copa America and couldn't get out of a group with Bolivia and Panama. Losing to Panama, losing to Uruguay, when he's trying to say he's progressing this team to a level where they're able to beat a team like Uruguay. But right now, Uruguay, Colombia, those teams are better than the United States. The United States needs to attempt to at least even that scale by the time they get to the World Cup in 2026. And Greg Berhalter just didn't seem like the guy to do it. And most importantly, he didn't inspire anything. In a home World Cup, energy, emotion, momentum, so important. And Greg Berhalter just was not able to inspire that. The reason I'm so excited that Greg Berhalter has been fired doesn't necessarily have to do with all of the results on the field. When Greg Berhalter was rehired after the World Cup, because they let his contract run out, there was the whole investigation that had to do with all the Reynes stuff, right? When he was rehired, there was a legitimate argument for him being rehired. The results had been solid. He got the team back to the World Cup. He got to the World Cup knockout. Sure, we got manhandled by the Netherlands, but whatever. It was progress. A hell of a lot better than not being there in the first place. He won a couple of Nations Leagues. He won a Gold Cup, right? There were trophies to show for his time in charge of the U.S. national team. So even though myself and a lot of other people, when he was rehired after the last World Cup, after the investigation concluded he had no wrongdoing, 30 years ago or whatever, we all sat here and said this wasn't a good decision, but there was a legitimate argument based off the results that he had put together that he should have been rehired as the coach of the U.S. national team in the first place, right? But now there's not. Okay, so I'm glad that they fired him, but the point that I was making is going into this World Cup, you need somebody that everybody can be excited about. Whether it works out or not, I don't know, and it almost doesn't matter. But what does matter is going into that group stage in the World Cup where the United States is going to be a pot one team and absolutely has to get out of that group. You want a manager that is on billboards, that everybody, when they're talking to their friends, when they're posting on Instagram, whatever, right, that they're excited about. That, there is a buzz about what this manager can do and what this team can do, because the energy and the excitement is almost 51% of the battle when you're talking about a home tournament. Germany lost in the quarterfinal. They didn't need to be the best team showing up, but the energy around that team is back, right? Like the energy around Germany is back. Doing the podcast with Julian Gressel, talking about how it was bringing the nation together and everybody was excited about the national team again, right? And that sort of galvanizing impact. Well, if you take that galvanizing impact, then you put it in the United States where you're growing the game exponentially. This World Cup is going to be huge, right? This World Cup is going to be an absolutely massive deal, okay? Not just because there's going to be 48 teams instead of 32, which if you didn't know that, congratulations. The United States also has a large expat community for basically every country in the world. So every country playing in the tournament is going to have a built-in fan group in the United States already, which is going to be awesome. We see that sort of stuff at Copa America, right? I'm sure we saw that sort of stuff at World Cup 94. I wasn't alive yet, but that World Cup, I'm sure there were huge contingents of fans from all the countries around the world that are going to be great. And the United States is going to go buck wild for the U.S. team. right? That's just what we do, right? The vast majority of the Americans that are going to be watching those matches in bars and pubs and whatever, they're not even going to understand the rules of the sport or what a handball is or what constitutes a penalty or not, right? And I mean, not that even the referees seem to know that these days, but you kind of get the point, right? But they're going to be wearing American Eagle outfits and rocking the stars and stripes and making it happen, right? And it's going to be incredible energy. And what you need is a coach that has more of a personality than Greg Berhalter does, right? Because as much as Greg Berhalter wore fancy shoes and did a bunch of bounce passes, right? He's just not, he was kind of a Nepo baby, right? Because of his brother being in charge of the general manager who's in charge of hiring the manager in the first place. He just seemed to be a product of the old U.S. soccer, right? And what we need now is somebody that is a product of the new U.S. soccer, somebody that can step into that spotlight and own it, somebody that can step into that spotlight and lead, not the U.S. team, but the American people into like soccer or footballing greatness. I'm looking for like a 2002 South Korea World Cup run to the semifinals. You do that in the United States, then you let the U.S. know that they can compete with and hang with teams like England and France and Spain, whether they can or not. Right? But the United States did go to the World Cup and draw England the last time it was there. Then going into the World Cup in 2018, the United States beat France in a friendly. The United States is not nearly as far away from those teams as a lot of those teams would like to believe. At least the results would indicate that. The United States with a draw against Brazil in the run-up to the Copa America tournament. Obviously, Brazil's in a bit of a downswing right now, but you get the idea. Right? And the United States playing a very tight match against Uruguay, where I believe their only goal was offside. Now, the U.S. still has to, the U.S. had to get rid of Berhalter because it's also a team that's capable of losing to Trinidad and Tobago and missing the World Cup, losing to Panama and getting grouped at Copa America, right? We are capable of terrible and awful things. But we've shown the ability, flashes, right, to be able to handle bigger things. We've got players in Christian Pulisic and Weston McKennie that play against the best in the world consistently. They might not be the best in the world, but they at least are not afraid of them, right? They are familiar with the concept of playing against those guys. A manager that can come in and give those guys an extra 15%, just inspire with their presence. I'm not one of those overly optimistic people that thinks it's a Jurgen Klopp or a Thomas Tuchel. I think that the United States should offer the entire state of Rhode Island to both of those guys if they would be willing to come over and take on a 2-year project to guide this team through the World Cup. I think that might be something that's a lot of fun for them. It's a little less intensive than coaching a club. You're not working 11 months out of the year nonstop, constantly, forever and ever. And then after those 2 years, you can just go back to club management if you want to. And you have an opportunity to build a brand in the United States that could last forever as long as you make it to at least the quarterfinal, right? Like I try and lurch forward in that way. And the United States will be in pot one because it's a host nation. So getting to the quarterfinals is not going to be as hard as it otherwise would be if you were just kind of drawn into the tournament willy-nilly in the first place. Before we leave Greg Berhalter in the dust, I would like to read the statement that he released after he was fired. He said, "I want to thank the U.S. Soccer Federation for entrusting me to lead this team for the past 5 years. Representing our country is a tremendous honor, and I'm proud of the identity we built on and off the field. It was very gratifying watching this team improve over the years, and I remain grateful for the lifetime bonds created with our players, coaches, and staff members. The Copa America result is extremely disappointing, and I take full responsibility for our performance. Our approach and process was always focused on the 2026 World Cup, and I remain confident that this group will be one of the great stories in 2026. So I do love that a little bit. A pretty classy statement overall, but he's clearly his excuse for the Copa America performance is, well, our whole focus was on developing a team that would be ready by 2026, and, Copa America was just a tune-up for that. Bullshit. Seriously. Serious bullshit. Because part of that tune-up process is let's see how well we can do at Copa America in the first place. Right? This national team pool is not going to be that different 2 years from now. Okay, I mean, he's slipping in a little excuse under the radar. But again, I never thought that Greg was a bad person. I just think he's a bad coach. Or more specifically, not a good enough coach to be leading the U.S. national team, somebody that should be running a mid-level MLS side and having a successful career making millions of dollars. More power to you. You're a better freaking coach than I am. Right, I'm sure of that. As much as I'd love to believe I could step between the lines, I think Greg Berhalter led the United States national team better than I would have been able to. But that's not the bar here. That's not the requirement. And so that was his statement. He was gone. And what something people noticed immediately was on the post for Bleacher Report's post. Gio Reyna liked the firing post within 10 minutes. He wasn't the only one. Joe Scally liked the post too. It's just kind of awkward, just like showing up at your op's funeral just to make sure that they're dead sort of move. Obviously, Gio Reyna and his parents are just not fans of Greg Berhalter. They used to all be family friends. I believe that I think Berhalter was the best man at Gio Reyna's dad's wedding. It was that or either the reverse. I mean, they were that good of friends and then had the giant falling out over the World Cup. So Gio Reyna was feasting. Joe Scally had been kind of frozen out of the team at right back a lot of the time, even though he's a regular Bundesliga player. So him liking that post as well does not surprise me at all. You get it while it's hot, man. Get it while it's hot. And Greg Berhalter's gone. And I is relieved and happy as I am, I'm almost surprised because the U.S. Federation got this right. If it can get one more decision right, then the U.S. is going to be set up for potentially huge success in 2026. Because the most successful version with the best momentum and the best vibe going into the World Cup, which is important, was this team without Greg Berhalter. So now, I don't know who it is, right? If it's Jurgen Klopp, Thomas Tuchel, that would be beyond my wildest dreams. Maybe an Hervé Renard, a guy that led Zambia to an AFCON championship, a guy that coached Saudi Arabia to their win over Argentina. His contract with the French women's team runs out after the Olympics, right? He would be somebody that you could approach and make happen. There are a couple of very good American coaches out there, whether it be Cherundolo at LAFC, who already has a way better record than somebody like Greg Berhalter did in MLS. Now, obviously, he wouldn't be my first choice, but if you can't entice Jurgen Klopp and Thomas Tuchel with Rhode Island, maybe you try Delaware instead. But if they don't want either of those states and maybe they don't want to come here, you're going to have to settle for that kind of next tier of coach, then okay. But I saw a CBS Sports article that listed 25, 30 candidates that could be a viable coach for the U.S. national team, right? And look, to be honest, I'm not a person that's going to be able to tell, and nobody else is either, that's going to be able to tell you who exactly is the right answer. Just give me somebody that I can emotionally invest in and will make me believe that this team can accomplish great things. Because if we can go into this World Cup believing we can accomplish great things, that is the only way that we will actually accomplish great things. Okay, and this is the first step to that, and I could not be more happy that the first step has been taken. Here we are.